Love lives here.
Good morning. I am Jeff Ryan, the senior minister here at Riverside Center for Spiritual Living, where we know that love lives here. Absolutely, yes. Yes. All right, and we set our focus statement this morning. Yes. Yes. Well, we're talking about holy experiments this morning. Holy experiments, Batman. Right? Yeah. I know when I first heard it, I'm like, yeah, I have to add Batman to the end of that because it's just incomplete without Batman at the end of it. Those of us of a certain age might understand that a little bit better. I can't believe that I'm saying those of us of a certain age. However, Eddie and I did celebrate our birthdays last week. So, yes, today is the 8th day of Jeffmas, so we still have 4 more days of Jeffmas to go. And we've had a great time seeing shows. We saw Hadestown. We saw Tina. Not Tina Turner, because, she has moved on to the great beyond. But we saw the show based on her life, and that was a lot of fun, too. Plus, we've just been having a great time. And last night, we went and saw Fantasies, which is the local drag show that's done every year here in Riverside, and that was amazing. So we had a great time. So we're having an awesome time celebrating our birthdays. Because, thanks. Because, each one of us is an individualized expression of the one life, right? Individualized expression of the divine, individualized expression of God. So how are you any different than anybody else? So why don't you celebrate your life like the king or queen that you are, right? And everybody else should celebrate you too, the way I look at it. I'm like, so that's why I have Jeffmas. And like I said, I celebrate Jeffmas Eve. And because Adam came before Eve, we celebrate Jeffmas Adam as well. So, some people have a birthday month. I don't need a month. I just need about 14 days. And if you've been following on Facebook, you've seen that we've crammed a lot into those 14 days. And Eddie's sister and her husband and our niece and hopefully at some point our nephew, her boyfriend, came out. And so we spent the week prior to that, we spent Eddie-mas at Disney and California Adventure and Hollywood and Laguna Beach and the Queen Mary. So we've been living it up and celebrating for quite a bit. And my knees are a little tired today because we walked over 30 miles in that week. So my knees are going, no, yeah. So, yes, I'll be in the pool tomorrow, Sally. I promise I'll be in the pool. Yes. So, all right. So, there we are. So, let's get to the holy experiment. I know I sent the email out late. I'm bad. Sorry. How many of you read it, though? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Not even my husband read it. 6. That's right. There we go. He was celebrating Jeffmas. That's the excuse. Love it. So if you read the email, you know that as a kid, I loved science class. Science was so much fun. And the reason why I loved science class is I loved the experiments. I loved getting in there and trying to figure out why and making the magnets connect and, playing with Bunsen burners and chemicals and seeing what kind of reactions there would be. And the teacher always knew what the result of the experiment was going to be because, they're the teacher. And the idea is that you have a controlled experiment, especially when you have a lot of pubescent and prepubescent children that you're teaching. You want to have a controlled experiment, right? But what was so beautiful about that is even though they knew what the results were going to be, we didn't know what the results were going to be. And so we learned through practicing, through experimenting, through trying, through trial and error, what the physical laws or the mechanical laws of the universe are. And we got discovered those for ourselves so that we then learn, and then we know that when you mix ammonia and bleach, you could die, right? There's a highly likelihood you could die if you mix those two. But when you learn these things, you're also learning how the reactions, how the cause and effect work in the physical realm, right? And you're learning them and you're applying them, and so that you know that when you go to flip on a light switch, beep, what's going to happen? The lights are going to come on, right? If I jump off the table, what's going to happen? I'm not going to float to the ceiling. I'm going to land on my butt on the floor, right? And because of gravity, right? So you learn these things, you discover these things, and then you learn and then you apply them for yourself. And then you realize that, like, I don't have to think about it anymore because I know that if I jump off the table, I'm not going to fly, I'm going to land. And depending on how I land, I could hurt myself or I couldn't, right? Same thing with the use of electricity. How am I using the electricity? If I'm sticking a knife into the electrical outlet, what's going to happen? Bad things happen. I'm going to get shocked, right? However, if I put a grounded plug in there for the fan or the TV, what's going to happen? It's going to work. It's going to function because I'm doing what? I'm obeying the law that governs electricity. I'm using it for the good. I'm using it for the intention with which it was created, right? In a way that is positive, in a way that is useful for me. If I stick the knife in and get electrocuted or get shocked, am I using the law to my benefit? Not so much, right? So, no, not really. So, unless what? It's a lesson to be learned. Oh, yes. Another fine growth opportunity, right? Because what happens is we're experimenting with it, right? We're experimenting. So when we experiment, we learn whether we are confirming our idea or we learn that, okay, that didn't work, so let me try something different, right? Basic scientific method, right? We form a hypothesis, we test the hypothesis, we collect the data, and then we make decisions based on that, and we reach a conclusion on that. And if we don't like what we reach the conclusion on, we form another hypothesis, we try another experiment, we collect more data, and so on, right? So this thing that we practice here at Centers for Spiritual Living is called the science of mind. So who knew that there was science in science of mind? Right? Ernest Holmes did. And so what we discover in science, the science of mind, science is a methodical study of a subject, right? It's a methodical study of a subject. And mind actually means consciousness. So what the science of mind is it's actually the methodical study and application of consciousness. Do I need to say that again? Yes. Okay. So science of mind is actually the methodical study and application science of mind consciousness. So it's the methodical study of consciousness. Pretty cool, huh? Guess what other faith tradition uses that same word, science of mind? Anybody want to guess? Buddhism. Buddhism is also referred to as a science of mind, a study of consciousness. Pretty cool. Yeah. So the way that we approach science of mind, the way that we approach spiritual law then, or metaphysical law, is we do apply the scientific method to it. In other words, if we don't like what we're experiencing, what do? We formulate a hypothesis. All right, so what can I do differently? Then what do? We test it out. We experiment with it. And based on that experimentation, we collect the data points, and then we draw a conclusion. So what are we doing? We are trying to prove the hypothesis through our experimentation. You breathing? I know we kind of went science-y. Ooh, right? But we're proving our hypothesis. So back in 2008, I was searching for community. I was searching for a connection. I was searching for a deeper understanding because I had closed one door on my life and was now open to a greater possibility, a new idea. And I was missing my community, my spiritual community that I had had prior. And so I went church shopping. And I had heard of this thing when I lived in Seattle called CSL with Kathy Ann Lewis. And when I was living in Seattle, I was involved with the Unitarian Universalists. So I didn't need Kathy Ann then because I had something. I had a community. But I had heard of this CSL before. And I said, okay, well, that's an opportunity. That's an option. And I also went to the Unitarian Universalist Church there in Greater Las Vegas. And their speaker the day that I went was the head of the Las Vegas motor pool, talking about how green they were going with their bus fleet and their motor, all their cars. I'm like, cool. But at the time, not really what I'm looking for in a community for spirituality, though maybe they were a precursor for a green faith, right? So I ended up at CSL, and I walked through the doors, and I had the response a lot of people have. I cried for the first 3 weeks, right, because I had found my people, I had found my home. And I jumped into classes right away, and what I noticed in the classes is that my teachers, every last one of them was like, here's some tools, here's the principles, try them for yourself, see what works. And take what works, throw out the rest, right? Now, these people, just like my science teachers, knew what was going to happen if I did the experiments, and I did the experiments correctly. If I followed the methodology and I did the experiments, they knew what would happen, but I had to discover it for myself. And lo and behold, I did, and my life changed. Gone was the scarcity thinking. The law supported me in abundance, prosperity. Gone was the loneliness and lack of community, and the law supported me in finding my beloved husband, finding friends. Gone was the doubt, the wondering what if, the woe is me, the want, poor me. And what was replaced was the law replaced it with empowerment, with faith, because I learned how to use the law, just like I learned how to use electricity as a kid. I learned how to use the law, the spiritual law, the law that is back of all, for my benefit and for my good. And that is what we offer here at Riverside Center for Spiritual Living. That's what we offer. We offer a way of life. It's called a faith, a philosophy, and a way of life. It's right here on the cover of The Science of Mind. A philosophy, a faith, a way of life. Right? We offer the opportunity to take our lives and create a laboratory with our lives, a laboratory of learning, a laboratory of study, a laboratory of methodical study and application of consciousness and how we apply our consciousness to our lives so that we can then make changes in our lives. If we don't like the way something's going, guess what? We can change it. Not just changing our thinking, but changing our belief about it. Changing our feelings about it, changing our perspective about it. We get to experiment. Hey, that didn't work this time, so let me try that again, but with a different take on it. Maybe instead of that affirmation, let me try this affirmation. Maybe instead of the way I was praying before, I try spiritual mind treatment. Maybe instead of the guided meditation I was using, maybe I try visioning instead. We get to try and experiment and play and see what works and see what works for us. And we learn and we grow. And in this, we then prove to ourselves, the more we practice, we then prove to ourselves that, hey, you know what? How many of you have said it? This stuff works. This stuff works. I'm sure many of you sitting in this room and sitting there at home have said, whoa, this stuff really works. Because it does. When we believe it. When we relax into it. When we practice it. Oh, practice. Yeah, dirty word, practice. I'd rather just sit here and listen to you talk. Why do you want me to practice it? Because practicing is the only way you get to Carnegie Hall. Practicing is the only way you can prove it to yourself. Practicing is the only way that you can build your faith and demonstrate your faith in the principle of cause and effect, in the principle of spiritual law. That is the only way you will ever understand it. You might understand it here in your brain, and then you go to Costco. Yeah. And then all of that theoretical knowledge that you have goes right out the window. Yesterday, they were sampling strawberries. How many of you have never tasted a strawberry before? Didn't think so. Right? We've all tasted strawberries before, right? But yet, there they are sampling strawberries, creating crowds around strawberries. Breathe. And then I come back to center because I've practiced science of mind principles. I no longer get wrapped around the axle because somebody is trying strawberries and creating a crowd. When Eddie and I just want to get in and get out. They were good, by the way. Nice and ripe and sweet. Oh, so good. I mean, while you're there, might as well, right? So I want to share with you a reading. I know, I never do that. But I want to share with you a reading from Science of Mind. It is the 4th chapter. I'm not going to read you the whole chapter, but I am going to read you a good chunk of it because it is talking exactly about, it's called How to Use It. So how to use this. So if we are going to experiment with our lives, we really have to understand how to use it and how Ernest Holmes talks about how to use it. Make sense? Sound good? You ready for it? All right. Here we go. As I turn to my little spam musubi tabby there. Okay. One of the great difficulties in the new order of thought is that we are likely to indulge in too much theory and too little practice. As a matter of fact, we only know as much as we can prove by actual demonstration. Jeffrey just said that, didn't he? That which we cannot prove may or may not be true. But that which we can prove certainly be and is the truth. Of course, the theory of any scientific principle goes beyond its application at any given stage of the unfoldment of that principle and the evolution of its accomplishments. If this were not true, there would be no progress in any of the sciences. The sciences are objectively real to us only insofar as we demonstrate them, and until demonstrated, they are suppositional, so far as practical results are concerned. If there is any field of research where practical application is necessary, it is in the metaphysical field. The reason being that the principle of metaphysics seems less tangible to the average person than does the principle of the other sciences. As a matter of fact, all principles are intangible, but the world at large has not yet come to consider that the principle of mental practice, of consciousness practice, in the same light that it considers the other given principles of life and action. Its apparent intangibility is lessened whenever and wherever anyone actually demonstrates the supremacy of spiritual thought force over apparent material resistance. There is no doubt about the immutability and the availability of the law. The law is infinite. It is right where we happen to be at any given time, just like electricity, just like gravity. It occupies all space and fills everything with differentiations of itself, you and me. The law also flows through us because it flows through everything. And since we exist, it must flow in and through us as well. This is the crux of the whole matter. Infinite and immutable as the law is, ever present and available as it must be, the potential, possibility, and human probability, it must flow through us in order to manifest for us. How are we doing so far? Good? We're understanding? Questions, comments, concerns, emotional outbursts? No. Okay, we're going to continue then. It has been proved that thinking correctly and by a conscious mental use of mind, we can cause it to do definite things for us, through us. Because by conscious thinking, we give conscious direction to it, and it, consciously or unconsciously, responds to our advance along the line of our conscious or subjective thought, subjective direction. It must and will respond to everyone, just like electricity does, just like gravity does. Because it's a law, and the law is no respecter of persons. We are surrounded by an intelligent force and substance from which all things come, the ultimate essence in the invisible and subjective world of all visible and objective forms and conditions. It is around us in its original state, ready and willing to take the form through the impulse of our creative belief. It works for us by flowing through us. This law we did not create. This law we cannot change. We can use it correctly only as we understand and how to use it according to its nature. And here's one of the favorite lines of the entire Science of Mind text that I absolutely love. Hence, it follows that if we believe that it will not work, it's really working by appearing not to work. And when we believe that it cannot and will not, then, according to principle, it does not. Excuse me. But when it does not, it actually still does. Excuse me. But when it doesn't work, it actually still does. Does that make sense? Because it's done unto us as we believe. So if we believe that the law won't work, then it appears not to work. Because we have used our consciousness to say it doesn't work. But in saying it doesn't work and it appearing not to work, it's really working because it's demonstrating that it doesn't work for you. And so it is this misuse of the law that we experience as sin. That sin is actually a mistake or a misuse of law. And so then we appear to be, or we experience what feels like punishment for the misuse. So back to the electricity example. I'm not sinning, or I am sinning, I'm misusing the law if I stick the knife into the outlet. And I suffer the consequences of that, right? Same thing, if I misuse the spiritual law, if I misuse the spiritual law, thank you. If I misuse the spiritual law, then I suffer the consequences of that as well, right? But the moment I stop misusing the law, the moment I pull the knife out of the electrical socket, then the punishment or the effect ceases, right? Same thing with spiritual law or mental law or conscious law. The moment I stop and I redirect and I do something different, I experiment with a different idea or a different thought, I have a new thought, then the punishment, if you will, stops. The punishment is actually just the effect of the cause. That's all it is. So we get to experiment with a new cause to create a new effect, right? If we don't change and experiment or try something different, then we keep getting the same results that we always got, which is one of the definitions of insanity. Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result, right? So the opportunity that we have here, my beloveds, is when you are experiencing something in your life that you want to change, you have the opportunity to experiment with a new idea and a new thought. So, your homework for this week, what I want you to do is I want you to, it's here on the screen. What I want you to do is I want you to pick an area of your life that, or something that you want to experience change in, and then I want you to write an affirmation, okay? An affirmation is a short, one sentence, one breath. There are no commas, there are no semicolons, there is nothing like that. It is not 3 sentences. An affirmation is one sentence that you can say in one breath. Good? All right, so an affirmation, of course, is positive, powerful, present tense, and personal. So you're going to write an affirmation. Then what you're going to do with that affirmation is you're going to recite it out loud every morning for 2 minutes. So if you have to go to the bathroom to do that, or wherever you need to go, you're going to recite it for 2 minutes. Then make note of what you're experiencing, what you're feeling after those 2 minutes. Go about your day and notice throughout your day where or how that affirmation is showing up for you, or where or how it's being demonstrated. So that when you come back to home, or you come back at the end of your day, make note of that too. We're doing a science log, people, right? So you're doing an experiment log. And so make note of where you experienced it that day, or how you experienced it, if you experienced it, what you're noticing throughout the day. Then you're going to do that same affirmation 2 minutes out loud before you go to bed, and then go to sleep. So you're going to do this all week long. And at the end of the week, I invite you to collect your data points and see what has transpired, what has shifted or transpired throughout the week doing this scientific experiment. Okay? And then I invite you to share your conclusion or share your results in our Facebook group. Okay? Sound good? Yep, we understand? All right, perfect. So, my beloveds, as was mentioned, spiritual mind treatment, we do our spiritual mind treatment again and again and again and again until, as Ernest Helm said, there's a demonstration. So if you're not seeing a demonstration, you get to do it again, and maybe you shift it up a little bit and then do it again, and then shift it up a little bit and do it again, and until you get the demonstration. Okay? We're good? All right. So, have fun this week. Experiment. Your life is your laboratory. Enjoy it. Play. Play creates the curiosity. It creates the learning. It creates the newness. Tap back into your inner child, the one who is playing, who is curious about life. Tap back in and allow them to share this practice with you. And so it is. All right, so I invite our core council and our leadership council and our practitioners and ministers and visiting practitioners and ministers to please stand and surround the space as we come together in consciousness, as we come together in prayer. So just turning within, I recognize here and now there is just this one power and presence that is back of all things. It is the thing itself. It is undifferentiated substance. It is source. It is supply. It is all that there is, moving and creating of itself, through itself, as itself, all of life and all of creation. Therefore, I know that I am inseparable from it. There's nothing else for me to be other than this one life made manifest in individualized form, that I am the divine emanation and impartation of this one life. And as I know that this is true of me, I know that this is true of all gathered here this day, that each one is one with the one. Each one is a demonstration, a manifestation, an impartation of the one life. Each one is an individualized expression of life, of love, of power, of presence, of joy, of harmony, of peace, of unity, of oneness, of abundance. This is true for each one here and now. And so I speak my word for this beloved community, Riverside Center for Spiritual Living, knowing that we practice together. We use the life that we've been given to experiment, to grow, to learn, to evolve through play, through curiosity, with joy and harmony. We stay open at the top, available to inspiration, available to new ideas. These seedlings that Ernest refers to as being planted, needing nurturance and taken care of. That each one of us is able to speak our word, the word of the divine, because the one mind is our mind right here and right now. And so just as it is done in the macro, it is done in the micro. So I place this word into law, giving thanks for its fulfillment, trusting and knowing beyond a shadow of a doubt that it always works. It always says yes. I give thanks for this knowledge. I give thanks for this deep understanding. I give thanks that this is the way I choose to live my life, in accordance with divine law. So I release this word into that law, knowing it is done, knowing it is so, I let it be, and together we say, and so it is. So I invite everybody to stand and let's say our affirmation together. I trust spirit in every experiment. Let's try that again. I trust spirit in every experiment. Now like you mean it. Spirit in every experiment. Wonderful. Something wonderful is happening through me right now. Is this thing called love. Love is in my mind. Love is in my body. Love is in everything I do. I am it. I share it. I receive it. And I move love forward because love lives here. Happy Sunday.